Hey, you! Before you watch this, pause the video and subscribe to SemiPro right now.
What's going on YouTube? Ryan back again with another video. Today, we're talking about the Sacramento Kings. Finally, a fun team that actually has a chance to make the playoffs, even though ESPN doesn't seem to think so. The Kings are one of the three teams tied for the 9 seed, and they're the most underrated of the teams that could potentially be in the play-in games versus Memphis. Everyone talks about Portland getting back Nurkic and Collins, and how the Pelicans are trending up because they were without Zion for half the season, but everyone seems to forget that Sacramento was without Marvin Bagley for almost the entire year, Richaun Holmes for the final stretch of the season, and they just acquired Jabari Parker and Alex Len at the trade deadline. They aren't as big of impacts or factors as the other two teams, but they definitely still will make a difference. This team starts with De'Aaron Fox. He is a young, rising star in the NBA, and he just doesn't seem to get the same recognition as some other young stars. Ja, Luka, or even someone like Devin Booker, who doesn't have the same team success as the Kings do. They just seem to get more praise for what they're doing with their teams, and Fox, he leads his team just as good as the rest of them. He averages 20 and 7, and he doesn't necessarily stretch the floor with his shooting ability, but as the primary ball handler and penetrator, he doesn't really have to shoot that well because he can drive and finish or drive and kick to an open shooter. He isn't the greatest defender, but it's rare for an undersized, young, athletic guard to be an elite defender, especially at the age that De'Aaron Fox is, and while carrying a majority of the load offensively. The number 2 to Fox is Marvin Bagley. He was injured for the majority of the season, and the question is whether or not he will play the 4 or the 5 if he gets back on the floor before the playoffs to play with Richaun Holmes. Bagley hasn't been healthy enough to display his full 2020 potential, but his stats were much better during the 2019 season, and so were his averages, especially on the defensive end, and his ability to knock down a shot. I don't put too much stock into his 2020 statistics because the sample size is so low and he was such a high draft pick that it's expected for him to waver a little bit, and we really just haven't seen what he can bring to the table this season. He'll be in the front court with Richaun Holmes. Holmes is either going to start at the 5 or he's going to come off the bench behind Bagley. I think he should start. I think he's earned it. He's an old school 5. He doesn't necessarily stretch the floor, but he is one of the league's best rim protectors and shoots one of the best percentages in the NBA, especially around the rim. He's one of my favorite players in the league, and he has the team's highest PER. That means he is efficient as hell. Holmes does everything right on the basketball court, and he's definitely earned the starting spot, but he isn't young enough to be a rising star, and he isn't the biggest name to have a solidified fan base around him in order to push him for that starting spot. But I trust that Luke Walton will do the right thing and start Richaun Holmes because he's productive to the team's success. Someone else who's productive is Bogdan Bogdanovic. He earned a starting spot midway through the season, and he serves as an offensive spark that can stretch the floor as the starting 2 guard. In fact, 60% of his field goal attempts are 3-pointers. So his sole role is being able to shoot the ball at a high and efficient clip, and he's not the only one on the team who has that role. The same goes for Buddy Hield. Hield was relegated to the 6-man role after Bogdanovic took his starting spot midway through the season, and I actually think it works better for Hield. He can handle the ball more, the second unit can run a lot more through him, and he's the primary scorer of that second unit. But nonetheless, he fills that same sharpshooting role of Bogdanovic. Buddy shoots 10 threes per game at a 40% rate, making him one of the league's best sharpshooters and being one of the quietest 20-point per game scorers in the entire NBA. Harrison Barnes is also one of those guys who fills the wing next to Hield and Bogdanovic. And while Hield may be one of the quietest 20-point per game scorers in the league, Harrison Barnes might be even more underrated. In fact, this entire team is relatively underrated. Maybe it's because they play in Sacramento, or because everyone is just sleeping on their talent, but Barnes plays the most minutes on this team. The perception might be that this is De'Aaron's team or Buddy's team, And while those notions might be true, Barnes is on the floor more than any other King. He doesn't dominate the basketball or play particularly well defensively, but he does provide a veteran presence even though he's only 27, the same age as Buddy. And he shoots as good of a percentage as anyone from the outside. And he fits so well with any configuration of players around him that he can play the 2, 3, or 4 and work well in that unit, being a guy who can fit the role that he's asked to play. And I think guys that can fill their role regardless of the players and personnel around them are the most valuable in the modern NBA. Nemanja Bjelica might not be described as one of those guys, but he is, again, incredibly underrated. He might be the best player in the entire NBA. At least he's one of my favorites. He shoots 43% from deep while attempting 5 threes per game. That is an absurdly good percentage, especially for a big whose half of his shot attempts come from deep. You might look at him and think he's an undersized stretch 4, and that means he can't play defense, but he has the highest defensive win shares on this team, as well as the highest total win shares on this team as well, and the highest value above replacement player. It might just look like I'm throwing random advanced metrics in your face, but these metrics have purpose, and the purpose is to show the value of Nemanja Bjelica as one of the best and most efficient and well-rounded players on this team. He may be relegated to the bench, with both Bagley and Holmes being active at the same time, but if I'm Luke Walton, I wouldn't be so quick to put Bag ahead of Bjelica. I understand the investment is in the guy that was recently drafted 2nd overall, but the stats don't lie, and it certainly shouldn't be an easy or hastily made decision to put Bagley in the starting lineup and move Bjelica to the bench. Then, in the front court as well, there's Jabari Parker. He's a new addition, and I really don't think he fits that well with this team, especially not in any expanded role. Parker has proven through his career that he's inefficient and is an incompetent defender. And if there's any role for Parker, it's as the 4th big off the bench and a guy who should be almost exclusively used as an offensive scorer. The problem is that Parker doesn't shoot a good enough percentage from outside to be a respectable option like Bjelica, or even a marginal shooter like Bagley. And he certainly can't be on the floor with Holmes because the floor spacing would be atrocious. I just don't see how Jabari Parker works. The more realistic big that was acquired in that Dwayne Dedmon trade would actually be Alex Len. He can make an impact. Len is more of a poor man's Richaun Holmes. He's one of those old school 5s who in limited time with the Kings has been one of the biggest surprises. Averaging only 16 minutes per game, he shot 62% from the floor while averaging 7 and 7 and 1.5 blocks per game. To put that in perspective, his per 36-minute stats would be 14 points, 15 rebounds, and 3 blocks. That is very good, especially for a role player like Len. And to top it off, Len's net plus minus per 100 possessions is over 10 points higher than team average. This means the Kings are much better with Len on the floor than when he's off. So if you're asking me what Walton should roll with as a big man rotation, I think the ideal rotation is to start Bjelica and Holmes at the 4 and the 5, have Bjelica as the guy who can space the floor for Fox to kick to, and have Holmes excel in the pick and roll, with Bagley and Len coming off the bench, in which Len and Holmes never see the floor at the same time, and allowing for Bagley to shine in the second unit being the primary scorer alongside Buddy Hield. Then leaving Parker and Harry Giles out of the rotation entirely. Kings fans might not like me relegating Bagley to the second unit, but look at the advanced stats and the advanced metrics. Bjelica is performing better right now, and it will allow Bagley to reintegrate himself from the injury while being able to have a higher usage percentage with that second unit, and I really think it helps out all sides and is conducive for team success. There are 2 more rotational players who I haven't gotten to yet. The first is Kent Bazemore. He was acquired for Trevor Ariza and plays almost the exact same role as Ariza did, just a little bit worse. He's essentially just a 3-and-D, but he shoots the 3 at a lesser percentage than Ariza did, and he isn't very special. He's just kind of there and does an adequate job of not screwing up too much on the second unit. The guy who I really can't figure out on this team, though, is Cory Joseph. He has one of the worst player efficiency ratings of any rotational player in really almost the entire NBA. The league average is 15, and Cory Joseph holds a 10.3. But then you look at his plus minus, and per 100 possessions, the Kings are 5 points better with Cory Joe on the floor. So what gives? Is his lack of efficiency somehow helping the team because he doesn't play great defense and he isn't efficient on offense and he doesn't even share the ball particularly well? I think it's because even though he's listed as a point guard, Buddy Hield is the primary ball handler of the second unit, and it might just be happenstance that Joseph's plus minus is so high, because he has the lowest usage percentage of any rotation player on this team by far. But it's absurd for someone who does nothing to be that effective towards team success. And at this point in the video, you might be wondering why I'm going on such a tangent about the backup point guard on the 11th best team in the Western Conference. And to that, I have no answer. But I'm pretty sure Cory Joseph just broke my brain. If you've been a fan of this channel for a while, you know I'm a huge fan of complementary rosters and advanced metrics. And I don't think there's a team that fits quite as good as the Kings, especially a team competing for that final playoff spot. They have the complementary shooters and pick and roll big men to play off their penetrating star point guard, and they're just one of the most interesting teams in the NBA to me. And if I had my pick of the 8th seed, it would be Sacramento. If you made it this far in the video, make sure to leave a like and comment down below. We also have an announcement. We're looking for a third content creator. So if you have any type of video editing or content creating experience or interest, then message us on Instagram and the link will be down in the description below. Thanks for watching.